I speak all around the world online as a lot of the time because I've got 8 children and I used to have hair or had children. So I think speaking online is my limit right now. I'm also a member of PHP Fig on their core committee, where I work with people from the frameworks to discuss PSRs, what we can improve, what we can do, what new ones we might need. That's a lot of fun, but unfortunately it's all through like Google Groups, so it's really slow moving. And I live in Wales in the UK, the place where there are sheep and rain, and that is pretty much it. We got internet about 3 months ago in the country, so we're doing okay. If you need me for anything, you can visit my website, juststeveking.com, or on X, Twitter, or GitHub, I'm at juststeveking. For anyone interested in following along, I have made the repo public at juststeveking/stopbuildingcrud APIs. I've dropped a link in the chat if anyone wants to clone the project and have a look through. I'm going to do incremental commits as we go through this talk, so you can kind of see the process and the phases that we go through. Before we dive too deep into the code, though, let's just quickly take a moment for anyone who may not know or may want to have a quick reminder of what CRUD actually is and why we use it so much as software engineers. So we've got create, read, update, and delete. That is creating new resources, reading existing resources, updating existing resources, and deleting existing resources. There was a new phrase a few years ago called BREAD, which was browse, read, edit, add, and delete, which is probably a bit more accurate, but CRUD stuck around, so it's what we kind of use in our day-to-day, because a lot of what we do on the web is display a form, accept a form, validate it, store it, enable them to see it, allow them to edit it, and delete the things that they don't want. If you boiled a lot of what we do day to day, it is based around CRUD, but things get more complex and more features, functionality, and more people might get in the mix. So we are going to do a live demo today instead. So let's just take a moment to pray to the demo gods. If you've got an elephant, feel free to sacrifice it. Here's mine, unwilling volunteer. And we have a 3D printed knife. So we can pray to the demo gods. Let's get on with it.
Go.
So, she is HP Storm. It is a relatively standard Laravel application. It's not using anything special. I haven't installed Laravel Boost because I want to walk you through this and I don't want suggestions to be keep thrown at me. It hasn't got any other starter kits because the API one is still in the works. I haven't added much, and I'm not going to go through API authentication because that is probably a whole talk on its own. I'm very opinionated about that. So it's best not to talk about it too much right now. Instead, we will focus on what we're here to talk about, and that is let's look at how we can refactor somewhat of a CRUD API into something a little bit more. So if I open up my terminal and I just do a quick PHP artisan root list, you will see what we got so far. I created a very basic login route. It doesn't really do much. We're going to skip that. But what we got instead, we've got our get orders for getting a list, post orders for creating a new order, get orders/order for getting a specific order, put or patch for our update orders. Then obviously we have got delete to actually delete an order. And because I'm a lazy developer, I haven't written any tests. I'm just going to walk you through it and show you the process. Usually we'd write tests, we'd refactor, run the tests, make sure they work, but time was of the essence for this talk. So we are just going to go old school and forget we know what TDD is for a moment. So what we'll do is, first off, we'll go look at our roots. I usually keep mine within roots API, then a roots folder, because that allows me to start breaking things out into versions and resources, and it's just how I like to do things. So we'll have a quick look in here and you'll see we've got this auth-sampton stuff going on. This isn't really doing much. It's standard stuff. So try and find that user, throw a validation error. If you can't find it, do a quick hash check on the password. If that succeeds, then we can create a new token for the user and just return that token. Nothing too crazy there. That's not the point of this talk. We want to talk about CRUD. And I am hoping I can scroll in well enough so you can see it properly and we'll focus in. So we've got an API resource here under orders, and what that allows us to do is just use the artisan make commands to go, right, make me an API controller for orders, and it will do that. Nice and simple. We can click through to this, and we can see that we've got an index, which has got a request, and we're going to inject the current user. We're pretending we've authenticated at this point, but we'll skip over that a little bit. Authorization for this is currently being handled in the list request. So once you've authenticated and authorized, we can say, okay, so get all of the users' orders, and we want to simple paginate over those. Then we're going to return a collection through an order resource, which is again a Laravel convention of API resources, and we're going to turn that into a response. We don't need to wait for Laravel's middleware or anything to kind of go, oh, wait a minute, you're returning something that's not a response. Let me interject and see if I can do something there. Be a bit more explicit. We just pass back a to response, meaning we can type hint it, and we know it's returning a response. In this list request, we don't need to validate anything. So we just keep the rules empty. And in authorize, we're just going to allow the listability for an order for the authenticated user. This will obviously go over to the order policy, which is relatively straightforward here. We've got a view any, yeah, anyone can do it as long as they're a user at this point. So then we've got our store. Obviously, we're going to validate all of that. We've got something really basic here. When we create a new order, we just want to capture the status, and the status must be one of the statuses on our enum, which is pending, cooking, ready, delivered, or cancelled. This is a theoretical food delivery service I have called Nom Nom because I have got toddlers. That made the most sense. Obviously, we can go get the user, go for their orders, and just create a new one. And we're just going to go, okay, using the order status, let's try and get the status from the enum based on the request status that was passed in. At this point, it would have validated, so the try from may not be needed, but the from is probably fine. Then again, we just return a resource, keeping things very consistent. That is one of the most important things of any API is consistency. Show, we pass through the string ID, and then I like to do a find or fail here. We can use root model binding, but when we get to update requests, we end up doing multiple queries, and I prefer to do it this way. Many reasons, which I'll get into. So for now, we'll just stick with this. We've got an order where we're just getting from the ID. Then, because we can't have an access to it in the request, we're just going to say, okay, so if a gate allows you to view this order, then carry on. Otherwise, we're just going to return a forbidden response here. Again, returning a resource. All very methodical. That's one thing that I really like about APIs is they're methodical, they're predictable, and they're very declarative. To me, it makes sense for my brain. The magical world of JavaScript, where everything's an object and also null, just blows my mind. Give me declarative PHP APIs any day. Then update, we're going to do the same, where we're going to update requests. We're going to go through and validate things. Again, same sort of deal. We're going to get an order. We're going to check the authorization. Then we're going to update it. And then we're going to return that order source as a response. Finally, destroy the delete request, where we just want to, we would check something here. like this. So we're just going to do a quick find or fail, 404 if it's not available. And then we're going to say, okay, check if this user is actually allowed to delete it. If not, let's move on. Finally, we'll delete it and return an empty response with no content. But it's perfect and it works. There are times when this falls over though. As I said earlier, order status. We've got various levels of status for our order. When we create one, it's pending. When they start cooking it, it gets moved to cooking. When it's finished cooking, it's moved to ready. When it's delivered, we mark it as delivered. And if it's cancelled at any point, we want to mark it as cancelled. However, our update request, to encapsulate all of that logic in one method for update, is going to make your controller suddenly 80 to 100 lines longer, where you're going to say, okay, what is the current status? Okay, can we move it to this one? And suddenly that CRUD methodology and that CRUD approach breaks down. And this is where I coined a phrase of behavioral designed APIs, where you design your API around the behavior of which it's going to be used. So what we're going to start with is our roots again. And instead of all of this, we're just going to say, we don't want any of that right now. Instead, we're going to say, let's do a GET request on orders. And we're just going to give this a name of orders index. And we're going to want a specific controller for this. So we can come up to HTTP controllers. And what I like to do here is create a namespace directory for orders. I'd usually version my APIs, but that's probably, again, subject to another talk. So for this example, we're going to keep it flat. So we can go ahead and we can just create this nice new index controller. Meaning down here, we can just pull this in, and instead we're just going to pull in orders. So down here, we can just link to orders index controller class. So, excellent. What does this need to do? We can go back to our order controller, and to start with, we could probably copy a lot of this across for now. So let's grab that, come over here, and just drop that in. We're going to turn this into an invocable controller, and that pretty much sums it up at that point, for now at least. So we can remove that, and that's fine. So next up, we're going to want to be able to create them. So let's go ahead and create a store controller. I'm not used to using this keyboard. I'm usually on my split keyboard, but I am streaming on my Mac right now, so I do apologize. I haven't quite set up everything on my new Linux machine just yet. So there's our index controller. Come back to here, so we can then say root, we want to post to orders, go to our orders, and then we're going to go to our store controller. And I like to make sure I always give my root names, orders, store. No real reason, it just makes sense in my brain. So we can now delete that root. Then we're going to want to show, so we can do a GET request to orders, and we're just going to have an ID there. We give that a name of orders show, and over here we're going to create another controller called show controller. We will eventually refactor this further, but for now let's keep it simple so that we're just moving stuff for better organization to start with. We want to be able to invoke that one, and that is all set up. So now we can link this one in on show controller. Sorted. Show controller can go, so it can snap. Just going to delete some of these so we've got a bit more room to play with. Excellent. Get rid of that one. Now, update. I will keep it in for now. We are going to be doing a probably a put request, to be honest. So orders, ID, name, orders update. And for now, we will create a update controller. Meaning we can just go ahead and grab this, drop it into our controller, turn this into something that's invocable. I prefer invocable controllers because it stops my brain from getting overwhelmed when one controller does absolutely everything. Right, so there is that, and then finally we're going to have this delete as well. So we're going to have a delete controller. So let's just delete that, and we'll grab this and drop this in here, make this invocable, come back over to here, and root. Oh, it knows what I want it to do. Perfect. Thank you, JetBrains. So far, we've really not done much. So I can go to this controller and I can say, no thanks, don't need you. And if I come back and do a root list, you can see we've still got get a specific order, got post, we've got a put for updates, and we've got a delete for removing. Still using CRUD, not a problem. So the first thing we need to look at doing is a lot of APIs won't usually, actually, I'm going to commit so we can see the difference. So get add, get commit, tool, moving to invocable controllers, and we're just going to quickly push that up. So a lot of the time, your API doesn't actually have to return something straight away. There's a big trend on the front end world where there's a what we call optimistic UI, where they will maintain their local state from the form. They will push it up to the server, but keep that local state and just update it in the background when they need to. So the first improvement we can make is this. This doesn't actually need to be created right now. So what I tend to do here, I'm going to remove that comment because we know it is. What we can do is we could create a background job to dispatch this in the background. So make a job, orders, create new order. There we go. So we want to create a new order. So what we're going to need to push this into the background job. So we're going to need to get access to the dispatcher. Now, I like to do it this way. You can obviously not do it this way. You can just use the job and have it dispatchable, but I like to be explicit, as I've probably mentioned already. So over here, we can say this bus dispatch. I'm going to pass it a command, which is new, create new order. And then what it's going to eventually do is return a new JSON response. The data is a simple message of message. Order is being created. That means that our status code can be response, HTTP accepted. So we have accepted that order, and we're going to kind of create it in the background, basically, in a job that can be retried and have human intervention should it be needed. So for now, let's comment that out. In seconds, JSON response. There we go. So one thing that I like to do with any API inside HTTP, obviously you've got controllers, requests, and resources. I also typically create payloads. These are really useful for if you're building open API specifications. So you can have a new create payload. And this create payload is going to be really simple right now. So it's going to drop this in, and construct, and it's basically just a simple flat DTO. We have a public read-only order status as status. We can make this final read-only because it's very simple. So we can come down here and we can say public function payload. We're going to have a create payload, return new create payload, where the status is order status from value this string get status, cast it to a string instead of a stringable, and that is all that needs. So that will create one of these from the request. So down here, this very specific job can say, okay, so I'm going to accept a create payload as my payload. Very simple and straightforward at this point, right? Nothing groundbreaking. We're just creating PHP objects instead of passing through arrays. So we can say payload, let's just say get that request and let's just get that payload done. Meaning all of this can, in a minute, be deleted. What we're also going to want to do, because this is happening in the background, this create new order is also going to need to accept a user. So we will need to serialize models. Let's also pass through that user. So over here, our user is the injected user, which we're using the current user up there. The duper. So what we can then do, we can come over to this create new order. Inside here, we can just say this user orders create, gonna pull, not going to do that, it's gonna drop that for a second, come over to here and we can just do a really simple public function to array, like so. We can then add in some little helpers for PHP stan, and this is going to return an array shape where we have a status, which is an order status. So over on our background job here, we can say that our attributes that we want to create is this payload to array. PHP Storm is really getting used to how I write code. It is lovely to see. Okay, so in our store controller, we can actually just remove all of that now. And that is going to happen in the background. We're still returning a response, but we're going to start doing some background processing. No more kind of IO blocking, except create it, turn it as an instance, nothing like that. So that is that part refactored, and it's improved, but we're still using CRUD. So let's skip ahead to something like the update. Now, this is a relatively simple application. So our order is going to be going through a few different levels. So instead of that, we can just do another put here. And instead of having that update controller, because all they're really going to be updating at this point is the status. So we can do something like status directory here. And we're going to have a, let's have a look at our enum, our order status, order status. So we want to say cooking controller, for example. And over on our update controller, we can still keep this update request. This is still relevant at this point. So we can come over and say on our cooking controller, for example, here, we can say, okay, public function, going to invoke it, and this will be that update request. As a request, we are going to get that current user as a user, and we will be wanting to return some form of response. So if you're focusing on this for a moment, instead of the standard update, this one is going to be linked to the orders, get the ID for that order, and then we want to say it is now cooking. So orders, status, cooking. You can give that a name of orders cooking, standard update, starting to look into behavioral driven. So if we go have a look at this over here, we can still do this. We can also still do the same form of validation on authorization. In fact, we can just do all of this for now and just refactor what we need to. Like so. This is 2 seconds. I need to also get that string ID through. There we go. So we've got order. It's very similar. At the minute, we're just doing it simply at this point. And then what we want to do, that is all linked. Let's go check the routes. So we can mark it as cooking. We're starting to look at behavior side. So order status. I will also do delivered. I won't do all of them because that will get really boring for you guys to watch. Can do that. Delivered controller. And what we'll do is the same as the cooking controller, basically. We're just going to grab all of this and then we'll step through and refactor. So come back to our roots. And what we want to do is almost the same sort of thing as that. You can do a root, put, delivered. There we go. It knew what I was doing. So instead of just saying, okay, please update this and here's a status, we can say, okay, we want to specifically update the cooking, from pending to cooking. We want to update it from cooking to delivered or ready or cancelled or any other status that you might think of. But the problem that we're having here is that all of these controllers kind of look the same, right? There's not a lot different about it. So what you might have seen a couple of times, because I opened the wrong file, is that I've got a little state machine to help with our behavior. We have our order state. Now, basic order state implements contract, super simple. We're going to inject the order, and then we're going to say, okay, we've got pending, order can't be pending, ready, cooking. It's mapping to the same as the enum at this point. So our order needs to have a method to access its state, basically for the state machine. So we can say public function state, and we don't know what happened there. So there's a state. So we are going to return a new order state. There. Can we? No, we can't, not yet. So ignore me on that one. So what we need to do is return a match statement based on this status. So if the order status is pending, then return new pending state. Same for cooking. Is it going to find us? Not yet. So order status as ready. and the order status as delivered. Order delivered state, there we go, pull that in. And the order status cancelled, we are going to return the order cancelled state. And all of these extend the order state, which implements the order state contract. Simple kind of state machine at this point. So what do we need to do with this, basically? This is where we're starting to look at that behavioral side instead of just standard CRUD behavior. So if we come over to our controllers, so cooking controllers, instead of updating it here, we want to say, okay, so our order state, our current state is most likely at this point pending. So we need to move this over to cooking. And what this will do inside there, if we have a look at the order pending state, which is a state it should be in, it will either be moved to ready, it also needs to be moved to cooking, public function cooking. And there we go. So can't be ready at that stage. That is my bad. So what we're doing is we're kind of encapsulating that logic that we get from CRUD inside that state machine, which is attached to behavior. So our delivery controller over here, we can just then say, okay, so get the state. At this point, it should be, it's either going to be something. We can say delivered. We know we can say delivered. For it to be delivered, it needs to be in that cooking state in advance. Super simple stuff with that part. And down here, we are probably going to need to just do a refresh because we're not returning anything. Don't usually like doing that, but I'll keep it there for now. So we've started to extract things into more of a behavior. So we are going to say git add, git commit -am, sure. And then we're going to say behavior endpoints and state machine. It's going to push that up so you can also see that. How am I doing on time, by the way? I don't want to waffle on for several hours because I'm sure you've all got lives, but for now I'll keep going. So we've got cooking and we've got delivered. We've started to break out of that CRUD behavior where our update controller is going to be hella confusing, right? And we start to break it into more of a behavioral driven. So we say, okay, let's update this order to cooking. Let's update it to delivered. Let's update it to cancelled. Whatever that might be, we start to move it to a new format of handling it. And again, you can do the exact same thing as we did before with the background jobs. So we can say, let's go ahead and say make a job, and we're going to do the same thing and progress order for now. So up here, we can start to pull in that dispatcher contract. So we can say private read only. We want the dispatcher from the container. And we're going to call that bus, meaning that a controller can be final read only and everything is fine. So we get the order. That bit's fine. Are we allowed to update the order? Let's check that before we dispatch a job. Then we can say this bus dispatch, our command is going to be a new progress order. Now we're going to want to pass through the order and the state that we're going to want it to be. So let's go and say state is going to be order status there, and we want this to be cooking. So come over to here. We can have a public order, then a public order status as a state we want it to move to. Serialize model. Excellent. So this down here can then move into return a new JSON response. So the data is going to be that, and the status is going to be accepted. We can pass back a simple message, which is more for debugging purposes. Order will be set to cooking, meaning we can just move all of that. Don't worry about tidying that up just yet. So we want to progress our order to this state at this point. So then over here, we have got our order. So what do we need to do at this point from a behavior perspective? We've got an order, we've got a state that we need to move it to. So our state machine at this point, we need to kind of come back to our order. And what we want to do is maybe something like public function transition to order status, and we can just say this update our status to status, and that should be enough for now. So we'll keep it like that for now, and what we're going to want to do is this order transition to status, this state, and we're just going to keep it like that. This is keeping it more out of that state machine right now, but we will fiddle with that a little bit. The other option here is to say state machine is order state, or this order state, sorry, this order state. So we've got that now, and what we're going to want to do is match on this state, and if, there we go, it's figured it out for me. Thank you very much. So if the new state is cooking, we're going to move it to cooking. If it's ready, we can move it to ready. You get the picture. That's all I'll keep it to for now. I'm just going to do that. So we can obviously go very basic with transition to, or we can actually use the match expression here and actually use that state machine that we were using anyway. So this cooking controller, we are now going to move from what it was to cooking at this point. And what's going to happen with the state machine in the background is if that state cannot be moved to cooking, it's going to throw an exception. We're going to catch it in the background in a dispatch job, and we're going to fail and let people looking after the application know that people are trying to do this to this state. They need training, better docs, whatever that might be. Because when you're building APIs, it's not about having an interface at that point. It's about making things obvious, educating them as they go. You can't focus on the UI and you have a big arrow saying, press this, you dummy. You can't do that. You know, you're letting people loose with your API endpoints, and you've got to try and make it predictable for them. So they know that if they go to order, identifier, and the state that they want to move to, they can go through it. And it's up to you to kind of have docs that explain, to move to this, you've got to be in one of these states, in effect. And that is basically how you start to break away from that kind of that CRUD focus of create, read, update, delete. Oh, but now I need to think about this. Now I need to think about that. Is approaching it as a behavioral designed API of what action does the user need to perform on this resource beyond the standard create, read, update, delete, maybe list. Let's start to break that down and understand how our users are going to actually use our API, and let's design it around them using it instead of my database. You can perform these very simple 4 actions. Let's keep going. And without diving too deep into state machines or a million other things that I went into, I will call it a day there. And I will thank you for listening. I could dive deep into any of those, but I want to get the point of focusing your APIs on being predictable based on the behavior of the users that use them. And but designing your systems in that way really benefits you as an engineer, because you start to think beyond just data in, data out, data store. You start to think on usage, use cases, and as soon as your brain starts thinking on those, you start to see the patterns emerging, and you start to see those edge cases that you typically wouldn't think about when you think, I just need to take this data and store it. Again, you can find me on X, GitHub, on my website. Find me all over the internet as just Steve King. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I will come back to the chat window in case there's any questions lurking, or if anyone just wants to chat.
Okay, Steve, that was amazing, man.
Thank you. It's always a fun one.
Yeah, I have some questions for you. I was taking notes. I'm a good boy, right? So I'm taking notes when you are talking so that I can ask you after the meetup. And I'd like to, just before I say that, for as we have some friends here that are junior developers or starting being some media developers, and people might not be always to say familiar with the terminals. And then, so for you guys that you maybe notice that Steve is writing a make job, for example, right?
I meant to keep writing PHP artisan. Okay.
Yeah, so that's
Yep.
what I do the same. So this is just the shortcut that he did in his bash shell there, and he's just calling alias, which is actually PHP artisan make job, etc. Right? So if you see sometimes, and I remember when I saw it first time, quite long time ago, right? I was asking myself, what the hell is this like? And I was trying to type. I'm typing it in terminal. It doesn't work. I say that screencast is broken. Like it's not a real command. So it's just the alias that each of you can find out how to make it. Yeah,
that is super simple. I will just quickly cat because I'm on Z Shell. You can see my Z Shell here. I've got a few things in here. You will see aliases somewhere. Or yes, here we go. So we've got some aliases here. A there for PHP Artisan. I've got one for sale to run vendor bin sale because it's so much quicker and easier. GS for kind of like a quick summary of what I've done. From Git, so much easier instead of having to type out all the time.
Super useful. Yeah. Oh, all right. So what Alexander Ramsey says in the chat there, amazing to see someone actually code something in 2026. Indeed, it's like good old times. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great thing. So the question related to API that I have is if you can explain the difference. Like we see there, we have put, we have patch, we have delete. Those are the terms, not terms, the verbs, right? And like people are not familiar with that. Like, what is the difference, for example, between update and delete and destroy and put and patch? And these are verbs of APIs, right? So I would like to know these things in short. Like, what is that?
what that all boils down to is those HTTP verbs. So obviously you've got the get, which is getting a resource. Post, you're going to be creating something. Put. So if you're ever unsure, the kind of Mozilla documents online are perfect for this. And what that put is it's basically replacing the content that you're trying to modify. So you want to put the payload of your request to replace what you've got stored. So you want to be passing all of the attributes for that entity, for that model, over a put request so that it can basically replace that line in the database is the easiest way to explain that one. When you're doing a patch request, you're typically patching very specific fields. So you want to patch, probably, I did it slightly wrong there. I should have used patch, to be honest, if you want to be purist, because I'm only updating the status. So I'm going to patch the status attribute of this model. You're targeting columns when you're looking at patch requests. You're going, okay, so here's the data for this and the data for that. I want to basically update these two fields for this entity, for this model in the database. Whereas a put is, I'm going to replace the whole thing.
All right.
My defense, my order only has a status column, so it doesn't really change much for me if it's put or patch, but general practice, if you want to replace more than one thing in one request, then do a put request. If you're only updating one aspect of it, then you can do a patch request. But either really works because it's up to you at the end of the day.
So
And
basically,
depends
if I
how
want,
purist you want to be.
yeah, if I want to, let's say I have the form of the, I don't know, user age, user name, etc., right? And I want to do only the user age, replacing it, right? So
Yeah,
I will use the patch. But if I'm gonna do the whole form and replacing all these data, so there is all the changes there, then I'm gonna go with the put, right?
exactly. If you're doing like live updates where you fill in the kind of the input, and then on Blur you're going to send a request to the API to update that, you can use that patch request at that point. If you're just going to wait to the end to submit, that would be a put request because you're going to put that entire database data in that database instead of patching that field.
Right. So that would be really important if we are building some public APIs.
Yeah, if you're using a public API that a lot of people will use, they will expect that level of behavior, basically.
Right. I've noticed that you are calling these invocable controllers.
Yes.
And me, I lately, you know what I'm lately doing? I'm just got hooked up on the action pattern, which is very
Yep.
similar to it, right? So I usually extract actions folder and I keep the things in the actions folder and then I call them internally from either API controller or I started doing it pretty much lately since Laravel MCP came up, right? And then
Yeah.
I figured it out a brilliant use case for action patterns and put it in the action folder. And then I can call
Yep.
API, I can call MCP things, I took on internals, all through the action folder and the controllers there.
Yeah. So typically what I do in that scenario is if I've got a front end, an API, a CLI, an MCP, multiple interfaces for working with that data, that is when I would leverage something like the action pattern. For me, when I'm building APIs, I want my request that comes in to map to a class that only does that one thing. And then any behavior is then subsequently a separate class. So you can really follow the chain of every single step that that request is going to take
Yeah,
from coming in, any middleware, hit the controller, what behavior does that controller need to implement? Perfect, now it can respond.
great
So
one.
yeah, 100% action pattern for any application that's more than just update the status field.
Awesome. Hey, Steve, that was what I wanted to ask. Now, let me see, guys, is there anything that you would like to ask Steve here?
absolutely anything. It doesn't just have to be about this talk.
How long have you been doing coding in Laravel?
Laravel. I started using Laravel on version 4.3
Wow.
and hated it. Absolutely hated Laravel for the first 3 years that I used it. Um, it wasn't until I kind of got into more of a lead role where I saw the benefits. I was an absolute nerd back then when it came to PHP. It was, if I didn't define the infrastructure, the container bindings, everything all laid out in my fancy pattern, then, it's taken too much control away from me. And it wasn't until I was responsible for other people also writing code at a good quality that I suddenly realized, wait a minute, I may have judged this a little bit. Laravel doing all of this for me means that I can get more stuff done. It might not be that architecturally pure thing that I was thinking of, but it works and it gets the job done. Okay, I didn't wire up every single specific dependency that I want to use, but does it matter at that point? So, yeah, years, absolute years. In fact, I think I started losing my hair when I started using Laravel. I think I was just slowly morphing into the British version of Taylor Otwell with, less skill, less
Yeah,
Lamborghinis.
I think there is something in it, in that we are losing hair with Laravel.
Yep,
So
yep,
I've
it is.
noticed, I've noticed a lot. My daughter, she's 11. She asked, "Why are everyone bald there?"
Yeah. I mean, the closest thing I've got so far is my stress Lamborghini.
Oh,
It's the
noise.
best I could do.
Were you at in Denver last year?
No, I got sent that by Ashley Hindle, who was just joining the team then.
Yeah.
Um, he sent me a load of goodies because I used to work with him a while ago. He was my boss. I left, then he left, and he joined Laravel, and I said, I'm jealous.
I got to go last year, but this year is not looking
Yeah, it's getting very expensive to travel. Specifically, Laracon US is quite difficult.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and yeah, I've got a lot of kids.
Some guy is in charge right now. He's not doing a good job.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, if you've got family as well, trying to justify, a whole week off work to go to the US for a conference when you could spend that time with your family that you don't see a lot because you're always working, it's hard. But they are fantastic. I was at Laracon EU this year. Um, you can't beat that experience and that feeling of hanging out with the community in real life, basically. You just don't get it anywhere else. So Laracon's 100% worth it if you can justify the time that you'd spend on it.
Indeed, that's how I get where I am through the
Yeah,
Laracons. So first time Laracon EU, and then I just continued and
yeah,
India and USA. But this year, as you said, USA is wow. It's expensive. It's in Boston. I was looking just the hotel for a few days. It's like 2,000-3,000 euros. It's crazy.
yeah, exactly. It adds up quickly, and then you add in all of the political stress that's going on in these countries as well, and suddenly it's not so attractive to go because
Yeah,
it's it's a lot more hassle
stressful.
than what it's worth.
Yes.
I'll go
Yeah.
to my local one.
Right, guys. Anyone else questions?
What's your favorite front end stack?
Jason. um,
Jason.
so that's usually my answer. If it's a Laravel application and you know I can't get away with Livewire, then I will use Svelte personally. I'm a huge fan of Svelte. It's really close to what the kind of the web component standard was designed to be like. It feels like pure JavaScript instead of someone's idea of a web API. But I tend to lean towards only building APIs. If I have to build a UI, I'll go for Livewire. If I can't use Livewire because I need specific JavaScript libraries and lots of dynamic kind of data going on that page, then I'll go for Svelte. It's
Yeah.
it's nice. It
Steve,
feels like what Vue could have been.
what are you using for the documenting the API? Is there any like
Yes.
just plug and play, because that's the by far for me the hardest part to create the proper
Yeah.
API documentation.
So I use Scribe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's less. It is to an extent plug and play, but you can enhance it by using PHP attributes on your controllers, on your classes, and kind of build out the documentation better. And it's then attached to your code. In my day job at the minute, I'm freelancing and working with a company that I'm building an API with. Surprise, surprise. And we're using Scribe, and we can go, okay, this is what a success response looks like. This is what a failure. This is what a 422, a bad request, and we can link to kind of example JSON files, or we can link it to an API resource through Laravel, and then it understands that. So not only is it great for that Open API docs, but also and other developers on the team they're wondering, okay, what happens if this fails? What's it going to look like? Because I'm trying to do the integration here. They can actually click through, they can see it, and go, okay, so that file, that's my rough JSON output. I can copy that, drop it in, and I can work with that. So Scribe is by far the best one to use, I've found.
Mm-hmm.
It's plug and play, but it will be a very dumb open API spec that you then get and can use to generate documentation. Or you can start to slowly enhance it and group things with PHP attributes, which is absolutely fantastic. And I love seeing attributes in code. Seeing attributes filtered in PHP code makes me feel like, PHP is finally becoming a language we can be proud of.
Yeah, I agree in that. Okay, guys, is there any more questions here, or we shall let Steve to rest? Cool. Okay, Steve, thank you really from the bottom of my heart and the community in Serbia. We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate your time, and in such a short notice you accepted to do that, right? I was told like, should I make one more meetup because I'm traveling to the Tokyo on the Laracon there, Laravel Live, right? I'll be going there,
I'm not
and
jealous. Not jealous, obviously.
I know. So can't wait. And then I will be pretty much busy the rest of this month. There was the plan that we have one live meetup here in Novi Sad, but unfortunately I couldn't get anyone to fly here to give the talk on our meetups, and then said, okay, let's do the online, right? So the people
Yeah.
get engaged and keep engaged with the community so that it can grow, and hopefully that you might fly to us one day here in Serbia and give a
That
live
would be
talk
awesome.
here and session. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be fantastic. So we met at Laracon. So the importance of the community is that I met Steve at Laracon. We know each other from Twitter, and the first time that we met is in Laracon in Amsterdam. And yeah, it just clicked, when you find people that are nerds and crazy the same way you are. It's always good. So
Yeah. Always good.
that's why it's good to keep this community and try to talk to your companies, or try to get somehow to go to these to these happenings all over the world. Some are
I explain Laracon is it's a little bit like a Comic-Con, but there's less Velcro and fur and more
yes,
computers and beer.
yeah, it's great. It's great. I really love going there. Okay, so guys, you know that we have the group on the LinkedIn. I will switch quickly here, and I finally, I finally figured out how to make the stream, live stream. So we are streaming live right now on the YouTube. I pasted the link in the chat here, so you can find it. This is the group. If you are not part of the group, there is Laravel Serbia RS here, where we are posting our meetups and everything else. This is Mr. Steve here. Then we have the Laravel RS. There we go. So this is Laravel Serbia page where you should, if you didn't register there, so you will be notified about our future meetups. And once you are in, you should be able to check all the meetups that you've been part of. And there is the button inside your dashboard that you can say, I attended this meetup, because we're going to have some nice surprise for people who are always on our meetups. For now, today, Steve mentioned PHP Storm. I'm using PHP Storm since maybe some of you not born yet. I'm kidding, but really long time, like somewhere 2010 maybe, or very long time I'm using PHP Storm, and I love it all the way. I have some yearly subscription for giving. So if you want to try PHP Storm, let me know, and I can give one free license for a year. You can try it in its full power. It's amazing. You will love it. So you just
I
let me
highly
know.
recommend it.
Yeah,
It
if you
gives
want
you
to try.
superpowers that things like VS Code just don't give you.
Yeah, that can't compare that to, I think, at all, right? So yeah, so if you are still manually coding, then yes, you love PHP Storm. Okay, well
Also,
then,
the AI editor is actually quite good from PHP Storm. Junie is really good at understanding PHP code. I have tested. It's compared to some of the others, it doesn't hallucinate magic methods in Laravel that don't exist.
yeah, yeah, Juni is the in-house AI product there
Yeah.
that they're offering, but now you can also connect the Claude, you can connect the codecs, I think, right? Even Kimi, I connected my Kimi 2.6 to it, so I'm using Kimi mostly directly from their interface there. Cool. Questions one more time before we go sleeping. I will sleep. I had Slava last night, so I'm still a little bit.
I'm going to be taking my daughters to bed, so
Yeah,
not for me yet.
yeah. Okay. One more time. Thank you very much for being here. Please share the link, share the YouTube channel where we have this, and we will have one more meetup at the beginning of the next month. We will see who's gonna be our guest next month. Steve, thank you. Thank you
You're
one more
more than
time, really,
welcome.
man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Say hello to your big family.
I
And
will.
yeah, and then guys, see you around. Bye bye.
Cheers, everyone. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.